This is the appeal that Wood's defense attorney filed on March 5th. The highest criminal court in Texas blocked the execution after reviewing these 300 pages. It is the second time his execution has been stayed, and it's left victims' families looking for answers.
In the heart of the Texas desert, where the wind whispers secrets through the sagebrush, something sinister had begun to unfold. The hot summer of 1987 was like any other, until the stories began to surface. 6 young women, bright with life and hope, simply disappeared. No warnings, no answers, just gone, and buried beneath the scorching sun. Their bodies were hidden away, waiting to be discovered. But in the midst of this haunting mystery, one name echoed through the desolate land: David Leonard Wood. Was he the monster behind these crimes? The desert killer, whose actions shattered families and left a community in fear? Or was the truth far darker and more chilling than anyone could have imagined? And now, here you are. I'm so glad you're with us, for today we step into the shadow of one of the most controversial cases in the history of justice: David Leonard Wood. Before we unravel the tangled web of this haunting tale, I have a favor to ask. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a moment of these true crime stories that will challenge everything you know. And while you're here, drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. We want to hear your thoughts. And for those who won't subscribe, kindly tell us why. We'll love to hear. Now, let's dive into the heart of it. The truth is waiting, and so are the questions that have lingered for decades. The summer of 1987 marked the beginning of an unspeakable tragedy in El Paso, Texas. 6 young women, aged between 14 and 24, vanished without a trace. As the days turned into weeks, the city trembled under the weight of fear and confusion. Mothers whispered warnings. Late-night conversations halted at the sound of sirens. The disappearances didn't feel random. They felt like the steps of a predator moving too quietly, too close to home. In a city once filled with promise, hope cracked under the heat. Then came the discovery. Shallow graves hidden in the desert outskirts of northeast El Paso, cold and cruel beneath the relentless sun. Bodies buried like secrets, waiting patiently for the world to remember. The nightmare didn't end there. As the desert gave up its grisly treasure, the name that would dominate the headlines emerged: David Leonard Wood. A man with a past, convicted before, paroled, living again on the fringes, now standing accused of a horror beyond imagining. Within months, he was taken into custody. The city held its breath, yet over 30 years later, the truth remains elusive, shadows dancing where answers should stand. Was he the killer, the desert killer, as the papers screamed? Or was a man condemned by suspicion, whispers, and fear? As the wind sighs across empty dunes, one truth stands. In that desert, somewhere between vanished lives and buried bodies, the real story remains buried too. Let us step forward now, into that story. The victims were young, vibrant, and full of life. Each had their own dreams, hopes, and plans. Dawn Marie Smith was only 14 when she vanished. She was a student, a girl whose laughter must have echoed through school halls, who might have daydreamed about a future beyond El Paso. In 1987, she simply disappeared. Eventually, her remains were found in a shallow grave in the desert northwest of El Paso, one among the tragic discoveries that would haunt families for decades. Then there was 15-year-old Desiree Wheatley, a young girl still in school. On a summer day in June 1987, she left school and was never seen alive again. Months later, her body was discovered buried in the desert, a victim of unimaginable violence. The possibility that someone so young, so full of life, could be torn from her world left a scar not only on her family, but on the community that lost hope in the safety of its streets. 24-year-old Rosa Maria Cascio had plans beyond just surviving. She had dreams. The last time she was seen alive, she had been out that night, socializing like many young adults do, perhaps laughing with friends, sharing hopes for tomorrow. But the night ended in tragedy. Her remains were found not far from where the others were discovered, in that same cruel desert earth that swallowed their lives. There was Karen Baker, aged 20. On a day in June 1987, she was last seen alive, riding a motorcycle with a man, a young woman on the brink of adulthood, with freedom in her hands and possibility ahead. Soon after, her body was located in a shallow grave in the same desert patch. The memory of her, and of how her life ended so abruptly, would haunt those who knew her forever. Angelica Jeanette Frausto was 17 when she vanished, a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, perhaps uncertain, perhaps searching, perhaps hoping for something better. She too was found buried in the desert, among the graves that marked the end of too many bright young lives. And Ivy Susanna Williams, 23 years old, vanished into the night like too many others. When her body was discovered, the same haunting certainty fell upon the investigators and the community. Another young life ended, another family shattered, another grave dug in the desert. 6 women, 6 stories cut tragically short. 6 dreams buried beneath the unforgiving Texas sun. Their ages ranged from early adolescence to young adulthood, from 14 all the way to 24. They were not criminals. They were not villains. They were girls and women who believed in tomorrow. Yet something terrible had found them. A predator, a secret, a horror. The desert held their remains, silent witnesses to a crime so monstrous it shook a city to its core. These are not just names. These were lives. Lives with laughter, with hopes, with unfulfilled tomorrows. Each one represented a family, a circle of friends, and each one left behind a void that no verdict, no court decision, and no sentence can truly heal. But this chapter is not just about tragedy. It is about remembering who they were, remembering that justice is not just about punishment. It is about truth, memory, and the dignity owed to every life lost. They say it began with a name, whispered in despair and fear. David Leonard Wood. In 1992, that name became forever linked to a horror that had shaken El Paso to its core. The arrest came after a long, agonizing investigation. The police had uncovered graves in the desert. 6 young women buried like secrets under the Texas sun. Their remains pointed to a pattern too grim to ignore. On October 27, 1987, authorities took Wood into custody. 2 years later, a jury found him guilty, convicting him of the capital murders of those 6 victims. Wood was no stranger to the system. His record showed prior sex crimes, a history that drew attention once the pattern of disappearances began. investigators discovered a troubling background. Released on parole not long before that summer of terror, Wood had returned to El Paso and drifted between jobs, nightclubs, and motorcycle clubs. As detectives dug deeper, pieces started to align. Witness descriptions, his tattoos, a beige pickup truck, a red motorcycle. The same descriptions several survivors and witnesses had given over time. In court, the prosecution's case rested largely on circumstantial evidence. No DNA directly tied Wood to the crimes. The physical evidence was limited. Fibers, clothing. The testimonies of former inmates who claimed Wood confessed while in jail. A confession heard secondhand, under heavily disputed circumstances. One cellmate testified that Wood had shown him clippings about the murders and admitted he was behind them. Another had allegedly been promised favors and freedom in exchange for testimony. Despite these uncertainties, the jury sided with the prosecution. On November 10, 1992, Wood was convicted. A month later, he was condemned to death. His fate sealed in the eyes of the court. Still, after more than 3 decades behind bars, Wood would publicly declare his innocence. He insisted the evidence was flimsy, the testimonies tainted. Over the years, his lawyers filed appeal after appeal, arguing that key evidence had never undergone full forensic examination, that some witnesses had recanted, that prosecutors had suppressed vital information. Even as the world moved on, the case remained alive in courtrooms, in petitions, in the buried hope of justice, whether for the victims whose lives were stolen or for a man who maintained he was wrongly convicted. 6 lives were taken. 6 futures were stolen in the dust of the Texas desert. And 1 man, condemned for crimes he may have never committed, stands on the edge of execution. But what if the truth hasn't been revealed? What if the wrong person has been punished all along? What does justice really mean when so many are left in the dark? What will it take for the truth to finally come to light? If you believe that justice means more than just a conviction, if you believe that we owe it to the victims to find the real answers, and to those still in prison to ensure the truth is never buried again, then this story doesn't end here. Subscribe and stay with us, because we can't afford to let the truth slip away. Ever since his conviction, Wood's defense maintained he hadn't received justice. They argued that the case against him rested on unstable ground. Testimony from jailhouse informants, memories decades old, and a web of circumstantial evidence. But no concrete forensic proof linking him to the crimes. No DNA tying him to the murders. No fingerprints that couldn't be explained away. Yet convictions had been secured. In 2010, after years of appeals and legal wrangling, Wood's team finally secured the right to test DNA evidence from the crime scene, an opportunity that for many long years had been denied. There was hope that modern forensic science might bring clarity. Among the items earmarked for testing were a shirt belonging to one of the victims, hair, blood-stained cloth, and other materials believed connected to the crimes. But that opportunity yielded heartbreak. The testing was begun, yet never fully carried to completion. Petitions for expanded DNA analysis on dozens of pieces of evidence originally collected but never tested were repeatedly denied by courts. According to his attorneys, some of those items could hold the truth if examined with today's technology. But time, legal inertia, and institutional resistance stifled the effort. Decades passed. Wood remained on death row. For years, his fate seemed sealed. But in early 2025, a storm gathered. An unexpected twist that cracked open the possibility of a new chapter. Just days before his scheduled execution, on March 11th, the highest criminal court in Texas issued an indefinite stay. The court recognized serious questions in Wood's appeal, including claims that evidence had been suppressed, that testimony used against him was possibly coerced, and that his original defense had been inadequate. That decision forced the state to stop, to consider, to hear again. It granted his case renewed life. Suddenly the nightmare, for some the long endgame of justice, for others the lingering fear of a monster walking free, was suspended. Some of the jailhouse informants who once testified against Wood have since recanted or claimed that their confessions were pressured, negotiated under promises, leniency, benefits, escape from troubles. One new affidavit submitted by a former cellmate asserts that detectives had guided the inmates, showed them case files, and suggested what story they should tell. Under that pressure, the integrity of decades-old testimony cracked under scrutiny. Supporters of the victims held their breath. Families who believed justice had finally come after years of grief now faced an agonizing question. Does reopening this case risk undoing everything, or might it lead to a truth long overdue? For Wood, the pause means hope. For many, it means uncertainty. The appeal demands the courts dig into what was suppressed. It demands that every shred of evidence be reconsidered in light of modern science, renewed declarations, and shifting truths. Because in the desert silence, the echoes of those lost still call for answers. And maybe, finally, they might be heard. The story of David Leonard Wood remains in a rare and uneasy limbo. Convicted in 1992 for the murders of 6 girls and young women found buried in shallow graves in the desert outside El Paso, Wood spent decades on death row. The murders date back to 1987, and his conviction was based largely on circumstantial evidence, eyewitness and informant testimony, not on definitive DNA or forensic proof. By 2010, his attorneys secured an initial round of DNA testing on select items from the crime scenes. Yet subsequent efforts to test additional evidence stalled. Many judicial requests were denied over the years. Despite the passage of time and advances in forensic science, no public record shows a decisive, conclusive link between Wood and all the murders. Then 2025 brought unexpected developments. In March, just days before Wood's scheduled execution, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals intervened. In a brief order, it granted a stay, pausing the execution until further order. The court acknowledged that Wood's appeal raised serious claims, including alleged false testimony, potential suppression of evidence, and questions about the adequacy of his legal representation. On July 30th, 2025, the court took an even more dramatic step. It remanded the case back to a lower trial court for a full re-examination. The order requires development of 8 specific claims from Wood's legal team, giving new life to what many assumed was a closed case. Now, the legal battle enters a new phase. Evidence long ignored, dismissed, may yet be revisited. Witnesses whose statements helped convict Wood may be re-examined. For thousands watching this case, families of victims, advocates, and skeptics alike, the outcome remains uncertain. The question that hangs over this story is as heavy as the desert night. After more than 3 decades and a death sentence scheduled, then stayed, can a judicial system finally face its doubts and seek truth, even if it means unraveling what once seemed certain? Or will time, silence, and fear again bury the answers deep beneath the sand? As the legal battles continue, the central question remains: was David Leonard Wood truly the desert killer? Or has the justice system wrongfully convicted an innocent man? Wood's supporters argue that he was a victim of a broken system, convicted without clear, undeniable evidence. They point out that the original trial rested almost entirely on testimony from jailhouse informants and circumstantial links. There was no direct DNA tying him conclusively to all 6 murders, and newer evidence cast serious doubt on the reliability of those testimonies. A later DNA test done in 2011 found male blood on a victim's clothing that did not match Wood, a finding his attorneys call exculpatory. Recent affidavits claim key prison witness statements were coached by investigators, and that critical evidence was suppressed or ignored. As of 2025, a top appeals court has granted a stay of execution and remanded the case for full review of these claims. On the other hand, the victims' families remain convinced the verdict was right and that justice must be upheld. For them, reopening the case feels like a reopening of wounds. Decades of grief, closure, and painful memories risk being unsettled. They argue that even if some legal cracks have appeared, the pain and loss can never be undone. It's a heartbreaking divide, one that seems impossible to reconcile, but one that demands the truth. As of September 2025, the case remains in limbo. Court hearings have been paused, with no clear date for a final decision. A scheduled status conference was noted for mid-September before a judge in El Paso. But after that, the wheels of the justice system slowed. The proceedings halted, investigations paused, claims waiting in the wings. The fate of David Leonard Wood, the man long labelled the Desert Killer, and the search for justice for the 6 victims hangs in the balance. Supporters of Wood hold onto fragile hope that fresh evidence, recanted testimonies, and untested forensic material may yet shake the foundations of his conviction. At the same time, the victims' families remain suspended between grief and dread, unsure whether reopening the case will bring truth and closure or reopen old wounds without answers. The community too watches, haunted by the memories of lives lost, uncertain whether justice will be reaffirmed or upended. Will new evidence clear Wood's name, or will the case be resolved once and for all, for better or worse? The desert, once silent, waits with bated breath. This case is far from over, and the truth is still buried deep within the desert sands. What do you believe? Is David Leonard Wood innocent Or is he truly the desert killer? Let us know in the comments below. The question of guilt, innocence, and justice. It's one that reaches beyond the courtroom. It touches all of us, and the answers are still buried in the places we dare not look. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on this case, and others like it. Together we can uncover the truth. The search for answers, for justice, is never easy. But it's worth fighting for, because justice is not just about a verdict. It's about the lives behind the story. This is Fatal Verdict. Thank you for watching. And remember, these are not just stories. These are real people, real victims, and real consequences. Until next time, keep living your best life.